So I wanted to talk about birthdays for a moment because Joan, my wife, for those of you listening at home, her birthday was yesterday, and my birthday, well, our son Ted, his birthday's in about 3 weeks, his first birthday, and then my birthday's a couple weeks after that, and Henry was just invited to a fucking birthday party, and I just don't understand why there are children's birthday parties.
To torture adults.
It's a miserable time. It's the fucking worst. At least nobody around here seems to be competing to have like the best party or anything like that.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah. And most people around here do them at a place, not Chuck E. Cheese. We haven't done, but that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head. Places like that, though, where the kids say, like, they sit them down
happy.
and
you say birthday.
Is that how it goes?
At Chuck E. Cheese, yeah.
That sounds miserable.
Yeah.
And Chuck E. Cheese, has anybody ever noticed this? But he looks like a fucking rat. He doesn't look like a mouse. It's like fucking Remy from Ratatouille opened a shitty pizza parlor.
Yeah, like the worst fast foodiest pizza. Like pizza that he got from a decent New York pizza place and then brought it down in the subway to his children, dragged it around a little bit, and then he brought it back to your plate with some tokens.
Happy birthday, kid. Here's some fucking salmonella. Go play a game that doesn't work.
That is so appetizing.
Welcome to Spoilerpiece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. I'm editor for The Independent. I am co-chair of BAFCA and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write for Salt Lake City Weekly and Orlando Weekly, and I'm not the co-chair, but I am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, despite the fact that I don't generally write for Boston area publications. But, whatever. It's the fucking internet.
It's cool. It works.
This takes place in Boston, so I think it works.
For sure. And joining us this week, returning guest, Megan Kearns.
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
Welcome back.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun recently when you came on and talked about the kitchen.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
That was a fun episode. Usually I don't listen to the guest episodes because I'm like, fuck them. I'm not there this week. But I listen to... No, I listen...
You're like, screw them.
Like, I got other things to do. No, but I listen to that.
Someone who's not me talking?
I know. I don't want to listen to that junk.
But I listened to that one, and it was like, it was a good show. And I was kind of like, man, they really could do it without me. I hope they don't realize it. So anyway.
Aww.
So anyway, that's neither here nor there.
It can't be done without you, Dave.
Thank you. That's what I was waiting for.
We have a lot to talk about on this week's show, so I feel like we're going to have to jump right into it. We're going to be talking about, first, Megan's going to talk about Vita and Virginia. Then we are going to talk about the Goldfinch, which I know we're all super excited about. Hustlers.
Yeah.
And Untouchable. No, that wasn't a mistake, listeners. It's just called Untouchable. It's a documentary that Hulu put out. We'll talk about it later. But first, Megan, let's hear about Vita and Virginia.
All right. So Vita and Virginia I was really excited to see because it is a film that is based on a play by Eileen Atkins, who also co-wrote the script with director Chanya Button, and it is about Virginia Woolf and Vita Sackville-West and their queer love story. And I am always down for a queer love story. So I was really excited.
I am too. I'm just throwing that out there. I like the queer love story.
I love it.
That makes three of us.
There we go. We're all here for the queer love stories. So I was really excited.
We're here. We like the queers. Get used to it.
Yay! That warms the cockles of my heart. I love it. So I was really excited because these two women were amazing writers. Vita Sackville-West was an incredibly successful writer in her time. She was more successful than Virginia Woolf, and Virginia Woolf obviously became incredibly famous after her death. Well, more famous because she was already famous when she was alive, but she became more famous after her death. And they both were incredibly accomplished writers in different ways, and they had this very long friendship and love affair, and they really pushed each other to be their best. They both came out with their best work while they were friends, and specifically when they were lovers. And so I was really excited to see this film, and the film is okay. I enjoyed parts of it, but the interesting thing, or the strange thing, is that throughout the whole film, we're constantly told that that they're drawn to each other. They have this passion for each other. They want to be together. First, Vita wants to be with Virginia, and then Virginia drags her feet because she has problems sexually, and then, which they don't address in the film, but in real life, it was because she was sexually abused by her stepbrother. But anyway, so she drags her feet and doesn't want to enter into anything with Vita, but then she does. And then they finally get together, and there was no real connection, no passion, throughout the whole film,
Wow.
I kept wondering, why are these people together? Why do they want to be together? There seemed to be absolutely no spark, no chemistry, no nothing, which was really disappointing.
I blame Elizabeth Debicki because not having seen the movie. I blame her because I've seen many. I don't know if it's a hard G or a soft G. Gemma Arterton? I don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen many movies she's in.
Yeah.
And she's always delightful.
Yes, she is. And she's delightful here too. And that's so funny that you say that, because the original role of Virginia Woolf was supposed to go to Ava Green. And then Elizabeth...
No, Ava Green.
But see, Ava Green...
I don't like French people with English language names.
Ava Green would have been amazing in the role because she is always phenomenal in everything she does. Mm-hmm. I love Ava Green. I cannot get enough of her. And I would have loved to have seen Gemma Arterton and Ava Green work off of each other and see how their chemistry unfolded.
Yeah, that's a movie that would have had chemistry.
Right? Exactly. It would have been just oozing chemistry. It just would have been pouring off of the screen. And Elizabeth Debicki is fine in this, but I felt like all she did in this was kind of tremble when and because they had Virginia Woolf have hallucinations because in real life she arguably suffered from bipolar disorder, but in the film that she's having hallucinations and she's like constantly teary-eyed, and there just wasn't a lot of depth to her character as Virginia Woolf. Like, there was no wit, there was no depth, there was no really nothing. And so I definitely wish, I hate to say it, but I wish another actor had been in that role. But so the film is just going along and it's making all these commentaries on the confining gender norms of the time, and it's talking about sexuality and sexual orientation and sexual fluidity, which are all really interesting, and class, and really interesting topics. But yeah, the film just felt kind of empty inside, and until it gets to the end and the two women break up, and that's like the best scene in the film is when they break up. Like, finally there's all this emotion pouring out.
Oh, wow.
And it's like you have to wait like almost 2 hours to get to all this emotion.
Which is very English if you think about it.
Yeah, that is true.
It's like, James, I will not be taking tea with you this afternoon. Reginald, what is the meaning of this? And then, there's a duel.
There often is a duel. There is no duel in this film, though. Warning.
Okay.
I know. Don't get your hopes up that there's going to be a duel. There's no
duel.
duels.
Warning. There is none in this.
Correct.
Spoiler alert. No duels.
No duels. Yeah. But I will say this to its credit. It is really interesting. So a lot of queer films, and this is a pet peeve of mine, they don't show enough diversity of queer sex. And what I will say is that in this film, there is one sex scene, and it definitely shows a little bit of diversity, which is nice. It shows different kinds of sex, or a different kind of sexual act that you don't often see two queer women having, and I was really delighted to see that.
It's not the spitting from Disobedience, is it?
It is not. Yeah, it's not that. It's not scissoring. It's not spitting. Not that there's anything against scissoring, but yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, nothing at all. But yeah, but the notion that you know, queer people or queer women in this case only do one or two things is ridiculous. So it's nice to see there's a little bit of variety being depicted. It's also nice to see the female gaze when Vita Sackville-West first sees Virginia Woolf. She sees her at a party and she's dancing kind of in slow motion, and the camera starts off low on Virginia's body and like pans up, and it's just kind of nice to see. I don't normally like the ogling and objectification of a woman, but I do enjoy that it's for a woman's pleasure and her gaze in this case. So that was kind of nice. So yeah, so there's some interesting discussions on gender norms and sex. And Gemma Arterton is a delight, as she always is. But yeah, I wish there was more spark and more emotion in the film. So
yeah, that sounds like just a disappointment all around.
Yeah.
For a movie that's about a love story, if the central relationship doesn't work and it's over 2 hours, yikes.
Yeah.
Or you said when it gets to around the end. I don't know if it's under 2 hours or around 2 hours. I just feel like that's too long for a movie that central relationship does not really work.
Right. It's like we're told over and over that these two people are drawn to each other, but I'm just like, why? Like what? And they're constantly saying that they admire each other, but why? Like, yeah, it just, anyway. So yeah, it takes way too long to get into it.
I do have a thought on why you might be told they admire each other rather than seeing it. And this is strictly from a literary point of view. It's kind of hard to show like somebody reading Virginia Woolf's work and being like, fucking right, man.
Wow.
So, you know.
That actually that is addressed in the film. So they write each other letters, lots of letters. And that is apparently accurate, that they did write each other a lot of letters. But it shows their typed words, well, handwritten words for Virginia and typed words for Vita. And then they're each talking as if they're talking to the camera and to whom they are writing to. So we do have their words, but still there doesn't seem to be a lot of emotion behind them. And outside of the letters, when they do have dialogue amongst themselves, it just feels so like there's just, I wanted more. I wanted more chemistry and more depth. So
Yo comprendo.
Yeah. Entiendo.
Another thing that because I'm not with you guys right now, I'm at my home office, my home studio in the back of the house, and I am reading the Wikipedia page. And before our friend Elizabeth Debicki was cast, apparently Andrea Riseborough was going to play.
After Ava
Woolf.
Green. Yeah,
that would have been amazing.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
Yeah,
I would even watch Birdman again. I like Andrea Riseborough so much. And that movie is dog
Birdman.
shit.
I like Birdman, but anyway, I digress.
Well, okay, we'll agree to disagree.
There we go. Fair enough. But yeah, no, Andrea Riseborough also would have been great. Yeah, Elizabeth Debicki is fine, but
I thought she was the weakest link in Widows, and
Absolutely,
not just because her character
down.
Was not well drawn, which I don't think it was. I just feel like she was the least good of that group.
Oh, absolutely, without question. I feel like she's just very one note, very one dimensional, and doesn't have a lot of nuance to her performances. No, so the film is fine. I'm not saying like don't see it or anything. I think it's worth seeing because it's an important story. I'm always here for, like I said, queer stories, and you know, it's two women writers, woman director, which is great. But yeah, just go in with low expectations, unfortunately. Yeah.
All right. So you guys saw The Goldfinch. How was that?
Oh yeah.
Well, let me put it to you this way: you can't unsee The Goldfinch.
No. That is true.
Oh, damn. Darn, I missed it.
I know you're disappointed.
Before I get into like the plot and the this and the that and the whatever, I'm just going to address the fact that this is an almost 800-page novel compressed into, with credits, 2 hours and 30 minutes. And it feels like a very long novel that has been compressed into 2 hours and 30 minutes. I'm not saying it's like Dune, in the way that it doesn't make sense. But I am saying it's like, hey, where'd these people go? Where did that plot thread? Why did that end? Like the whole storyline with Dennis O'Hare, he's like in 2 scenes where he's great, as he always is. Oh, and then it's just like they drop that story thread, like meaning the fake antiques that what's his name has been selling. And they do bring up the fake antiques later because he can, the kid confesses to Jeffrey Wright, oh, I did this thing. But it's never resolved. It's never like, do they pay him back? Or because it's like a big deal in the middle of the movie, and then it's just not, So there's a lot of stuff like that. Would you agree, Megan?
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I kept the whole entire time I was watching the film, I just kept thinking, because I did not read the novel, and I just kept thinking, God damn, I bet the novel's amazing, but this movie is not. So
yeah, this is really you can see why. Now, I don't know what kind of writer Donna Tartt is because I have not read any of her 3 books, because apparently it takes her 11 years to write a book. How hard is it, lady? So, just kidding. But I know
according
a lot
to
of
my
people.
Partner, she's amazing, because that book's amazing, and The Secret History is supposedly amazing. So that's the word on the street.
Yeah, I know quite a few people who've read The Goldfinch, and they're like, man, it was great. And people who I would think would read The Goldfinch and go, fuck this, but all of them were like, no, it's a good book.
I mean, it won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 2014. I can't imagine it would be horrible, but I also read the Wikipedia
page. Confederate of Dunces won the Pulitzer, okay? They make mistakes.
Well, I was just saying, I was reading the Wikipedia page, and it seemed to meet with very mixed reception. Like, some people thought it was the most brilliant thing, and other people thought it was the dumbest fucking thing they ever read. So,
well, it's interesting that you say that. It was controversial in that sense that it won the Pulitzer because it's one of those books where, from what I understand, you either love it or you hate it. It's really kind of like in that vein. But story-wise, oh wait, no, let me get to my other big fucking gripe, which is Ansel Elgort is just not getting any better the older he gets. He's just
poor Ansel.
He's just mediocre. Like, imagine. Okay. So when I first saw Miles Teller and he played the kind of part that he plays, and then I saw him do that 6 more times, I was like, this kid's one note. But then you see him change it up, and you see him, like, maybe you watch the drumming movie again.
Whiplash.
And you're like, oh, this is a little bit different. This does have some nuance. And then you watch fucking Ansel Elgort try to play a Southerner in Baby Driver, and you're like, what the fuck is this shit? Am I watching a guy who came right from high school and went into the movies? Take an acting class.
Oh.
So
I liked Baby Driver.
Liked Baby Driver, too.
Baby Driver is so tedious. It's just like, John Hamm, will you fucking die already?
Yeah, it gets comical how long he survives.
And also just like, and I like Lily James. I think that's her name, right?
Yes, that is her name. Yeah,
I like her a lot, and
She's
I'm just
charming.
like, what is her purpose in this movie other than to be the arm candy? I don't get it.
I think you just nailed it. That's it.
Yeah. So,
but this is also, neither here nor the Goldfinch.
No,
yeah. Right. You are correct, sir. So the Goldfinch, the story is, should I try to do the movie version? Should I do that?
Sure.
So there's this kid. He's at the Met with his mother. His father has just left them. There's a terrorist attack at the Met, which, as far as I know, has never happened. This is actually just pure fiction. And the kid survives and is sort of dazed. And he is standing next to a young. He's like 13 or something like that. So he's standing next to a young woman, young girl, whatever you want to say, whose name is Pippa, and her grandfather or her great uncle, something like that. I didn't quite get the relation in the movie, although they are related to family some way. Anyway.
Yeah, I was never quite sure how they were related either. So you're not alone in that.
Mm-hmm.
So the old man, while he's dying, gives the kid, whose name is Theo, gives him a ring and says, take this to, Hobart and Blackwell and ring the buzzer. And also take this painting of the Goldfinch, which is a real painting, which I don't know if it's ever been displayed at the Met. Maybe it was. Right? It's in, where it was created. It's in Holland right now. And it is a true, the artist whose name, of course, I can't remember, was...
Karel Fabricius?
Yes. He was sort of one of those wunderkind kind of artists whose work was amazing, except he died tragically when most of Amsterdam blew up in a fucking gunpowder explosion. And most of his art was destroyed in the explosion. And the Goldfinch is one of the few paintings of his that remains. What is it called? The Delft explosion or something like that. When I say Amsterdam, I'm just assuming that because that's a town in Holland that I remembered first. So maybe it was The Hague, maybe it was Delft. I don't know.
One of those.
So he takes the painting and he squirrels it away and he goes to see the old man's partner, who is played by Jeffrey Wright. His name's Hobart. They call him Hobie. And Jeffrey Wright, he's just one of those actors where I just want to say, why didn't you become a movie star? Why?
Oh
what
my
happened?
God,
Where's
yes.
the disconnect? Like from the moment you played Basquiat until now, you should have been in one movie a year earning $25 million a picture.
I'm going to say racism.
Very, very distinct possibility. But anyway, Hobie takes him in for a couple of days, and then Theo is taken to live with a school friend and his family, who the matriarch is Nicole Kidman. And I'm not sure why she plays the part the way she does, other than she's on Valium, I guess. I don't know. But it's
The
it's
character
one of those,
or Nicole Kidman?
The
the character, but also kind of her too. If you've ever seen an interview with her lately, it's kind of like you want to say to her, look, you either have to get up an hour earlier and drink some coffee or, stop taking the downers. I don't know which it is, but
Oh, poor Nicole.
I know.
Now you're being a downer, man.
Wah,
Yeah, I
wah.
know. Wah, wah, Davy Downer. So
Wait, but
he
I
goes
have
to
to I know you're telling the story, but
Yes.
I have to interject. Why are they all trying to give him drugs, by the way? That happens throughout the film. They're all trying to give him drugs. It's weird.
Well, that's
Anyway,
a major
we can
plot
talk
point
about
that
it.
he becomes a drug addict. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing in the novel it's much more organic, dare I say fluid even.
Possibly.
But if you know the waspy Upper East Siders, which I'm thinking they're East Side, they don't seem West Side to me. The Upper East Siders that are the Nicole Kidman clan, it just kind of seems like something they would do, I mean, I lived in New York forever. You know how many pill poppers I know? All of them. So, to answer my own question. So anyway, he forms this friendship with he was already friends with this one kid, and they become better friends. And there's an older kid who's a dick, and the dad only wants to talk about sailing. And then there's two younger kids, like a boy and a girl, who fucking cares? Except they both pop up later, and one of them in a very important way. But then Luke Wilson, as the kid's dad, shows up and he's like, I moved to Vegas and I got sober, and here's Sarah Paulson, and we're fucking, and you're going to come live with us.
Wait,
And
Luke
we need
Wilson is in something?
Yes.
The guy's
Yeah.
in toothpaste commercials. I figured he was like slumming and he had like nothing going on. He's got to be in a fucking toothpaste commercial.
Well, I think he needs to be in the toothpaste commercial because his jaw is so wide, he can't afford enough toothpaste. So, anyway, there was this movie that he was in with Jake Busey, and I just remember seeing the poster and thinking it should have been called Long Teeth and Wide Jaw. Anyway.
That is a lot of teeth
Yeah. So,
for one movie.
I don't remember. I don't think I ever saw it. But anyway, so he goes. So the kid Theo, and I will. I know.
Dave, I don't even think you're halfway through the movie at this point.
Well, he goes.
There's
He
so
goes
much
to live with
stuff.
his dad, and of course, his dad's not sober, and he's trying to steal the kid's money because the kid may have had a trust or some money left to him. And Dad basically drives himself into the desert and smashes his car up because he's got so many gambling debts that he can't pay. In a scene that's supposed to be tragic, but's kind of funny. And then Sarah Paulson out of nowhere, and I love Sarah Paulson. Love me some Sarah Paulson. I'll take her wherever I can get her. And she's playing a part unlike parts she usually plays. She's playing like this kind of white trash, pill-popping, drug addict, heavy smoker. But she still has that great Sarah Paulson half-lisp. So it's really kind of, yeah. I've spent a lot of time thinking about her. So she walks up to the kid like after his dad has been killed, and she's like, you may not have spent much time with him, but you are your father's son. And it's like, where did this come from, lady? Oh, I know, the script. So the kid is like, I got to get the fuck out of here. And meanwhile, he and Finn Wolfhard, or whatever, what's that kid's name from Stranger Things?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, that's his name.
I knew it was Wolf something, and I said Wolfhard because I couldn't think of anything else. So anyway, they're friends, and he's Russian, or he's originally from Ukraine. And Theo says to him, his name's Boris, of course. He says, Boris, we got to go back to New York. I know someone we can stay with. And Boris is like, no, I can't go. I'll come tomorrow. Let's wait until tomorrow, and we'll both go tomorrow. He's like, no, she's going to fucking put me in a home. She sucks. So Boris kisses him on the mouth, which is an unusual thing for a 13-year-old boy to do in 2002, especially if you've never talked about it, I guess. And I'm wondering, is Boris gay, or is this just like a I love you as a friend, and I'm trying to impress upon you the reason that you can't go? I
definitely got some queer overtones throughout from Boris. Not when he's an adult, but definitely when he's a kid. Yeah,
when he's
question.
a kid. But and that's the thing that's strange is that, like, he comes back in the movie later as an adult, and it's almost like he's a different person
completely.
But still has the accent, which I don't know if you've known a lot of kids who English isn't their first language, but they move to the United States when they're about 13. They lose their accents eventually. Yep. So I don't know why he still has a heavy Ukraine accent 13 years later, but that's another essay for another time. So flash forward, Ansel Elgort is the kid, and he's working with Hobie and dealing antiques with Hobie, and he's fallen in love sort of with Nicole Kidman's daughter, his buddy's sister, and the buddy is dead because he died in a sailing accident along with their dad, which is just one of those things.
Tragic.
Which is one of those things where it's like, hey, this happened. I don't need to explain to you what sadness is. You understand. It's like, oh, well, there's your fucking Oscar clip right there. And then it turns out that the kid has sold some of the antiques as originals rather than reproductions, which is a big no-no if you know anything about antiques. And so Dennis O'Hare, who is a great New York actor, he's in a couple of episodes of Law and Order, and he's in Michael Clayton as the guy who does the hit and run, just right off the top of my head.
He's also in American Horror Story as well, along with Sarah Paulson.
Makes perfect in the same season? Ooh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same season.
So he shows up and he's like, you sold a fake to somebody who can spot the difference. So I know you've got this painting of the Goldfinch and I want it. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he pulls out this article that he's fucking printed out on some dot matrix printer. And not really. It's very state of the art. And he's like, this painting was used in a drug deal in Miami that went bad, but it said the painting got out, so you must have it. And
imagine the painting running from the scene.
Well, it is a goldfinch, right? So maybe it flew.
It could fly away.
It flew the coop.
But the thing about it is Theo really is he thinks that he has the painting. He's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And then, of course, because like you do, he bumps into Boris while he's trying to buy drugs.
Naturally.
Because Boris has become... Now, this is the one thing, actually, that I'm going to defend the movie about. If you live in New York long enough, you will run into anybody you've ever met.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact that it happens like 14 times in the same movie, that's a stretch. but like, I mean, it really does. It's just like, hey, I haven't seen you since we were kids. Hey, I haven't seen you since last Tuesday at the ball game. Hey, I haven't seen you since we went to that concert in Prague. I mean, it's just like, who are these people? I just made up a couple of those, but where are all these people coming from? Why?
Mm-hmm.
And so Boris is like, yeah, let's go do some drugs in the back of my car. And so they're doing drugs in the back of his car. And he says, so I assume you wanted to talk about the painting. And Ansel Elgort's like, what are you talking about? He's like, the painting, the Goldfinch. I fucking stole it from you. And he's like, how did you steal it from me? Nobody knows I have that painting. And then Boris says, you're a blackout drunk. You showed me the painting, and then I stole it. And that's why I didn't come to New York with you on the same day. I wanted to like wait so I could go get it and bring it with us and like give it back to you, and you never would have known it was gone. And so they hatch this plot to go get the painting because they find out it's in the Netherlands somewhere, and then that goes bad, and they shoot a bunch of people and get in no trouble with any sort of authorities.
Yeah, by the way, that scene is utterly absurd. Like, the whole shootout is like, it's so rushed. It happened so quickly. It felt so cliche. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? It just, that I thought was, in a lot of annoying scenes, I thought that was the worst sequence.
Yeah.
Especially when it looks like Boris gets shot in the shoulder, but then in the next scene, he's literally fine.
Yeah. I mean, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
What is the point of this entire story?
Well, the tagline for the movie is something to the effect of a stolen life or something like that, you know, and it's basically about how this kid, you know, blames himself for his mother's death because it was his idea to go to the museum, and then they just happened to be there when there was a terrorist bombing because, you know, life happens. Mm-hmm. And he's just, you know, he's stolen this painting, and at first he just took it because the old man said, take it. And the other thing, it's kind of interesting, they do sort of make reference to this. The painting was thought lost originally in the explosion, and it was recovered. And so the idea is that this painting has survived, this wonderful piece of art has survived so many, like, crazy things, and then you come along and fuck it up, kid, you dick. It's kind of like that. So he said eloquently. So it's like I was saying, it's very and that's basically it. You know, he finds out the fiance is cheating on him, but he doesn't give a shit because he's in love with the girl he was standing next to at the museum, or he thinks he is, but she lives in London and she won't move back to New York because like she can't, because it's so sad.
His obsession with her is gross.
Yeah, it's really strange. And it's not really, it's just one of those things where it's like, if you spent 2 more scenes on their relationship, it might make more sense and be less creepy.
Yes,
you know?
Exactly. But because also, you don't, it's creepy.
Yeah. And Ansel Elgort, if he were a better actor, say he were Miles Teller, it might seem... No, and I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm just saying he doesn't have the depth. He doesn't have the range to pull off. He just looks... You know how I always describe Arnold Schwarzenegger? He's just like, what would a person who's thinking do right now? He'd go, So I'll go, And that's kind of Ansel Elgort, except without the accent, you know? So even though his name sounds like he should have one. So it's just, it's a lot of good elements, and you can see that there's a good story in there, but it's just not working in 2.5 hours. So I don't know, Megan, what do you think?
I agree a lot of what you're saying. I think it possibly would have worked better as either perhaps a mini series, or like if you wanted to cram everything in. But if you're not going to do that, if you're going to do it in, you know, an hour and a half or 2 hour long, you know, feature film format, you got to cut some things out. And I really think it needed some ruthless editing, and it just doesn't have that. And there's too much in there. And like listening to you recount the plot, like if I hadn't seen the film, I would think you're making it up. Like, it just sounds absurd in so many ways. What I will say, so I did not like the film. Most of it I did not like. There were parts, though, that I did. And I do think there are some good elements. I really liked Nicole Kidman's performance. I liked it. I'm always excited to see Nicole Kidman, and I particularly did like this performance. It was very restrained and strange too, but I felt like it worked for me. Her chilly demeanor, kind of, hiding her kindness. There was something that worked. And maybe it's just because I'm enamored with Nicole Kidman. Who knows? But it did. It worked for me. The other thing, interestingly, thinking about Ansel Elgort and his lack of range, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but one thing I kept noticing, and not that this does not indicate range, but it was something that I picked up on. But then again, I probably shouldn't have picked up on this. So take that for what you will. But I noticed that the kid who plays Theo and then Ansel Elgort, they both had the same mannerisms, like in how they kept adjusting their glasses. And it's just a minor thing, but they both did it and they both had the same mannerisms. So I did like that kind of continuity there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not that obviously indicates any kind of depth or complexity.
That seems more like a directing choice.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's not an Ansel Elgort thing, but I was just thinking about that as you were talking about him. And I absolutely hated the end. But what I did like, and what I wish there had been more of, is I really liked that they're, talking earlier about like, why is everyone pushing drugs on him? I really wish that it had, we see his drug use in his childhood. We see him drinking. We see his drug use in his adulthood, in various ways. Like, he goes to his storage locker and starts like smashing up pills and snorts them. And while he's like hugging what he thinks is the Goldfinch painting, when it's, obviously not, as we learn later. And I really wish it had delved more deeply into his addiction and like how his father was an alcoholic, and how, Nicole Kidman is clearly self-medicating or, having some medication issues, because she talks about how medication can, help you sleep at night and take the fear away. And we all need that. So I just would have loved there were all these touches of addiction. I would have liked if the film had focused a little more on addiction and tragedy and kind of the confluence of the two. Like that, I wish it had been more of the focus of, how he handles his PTSD or doesn't, and because of his addiction. But yet it feels like the film gets so bogged down and distracted by Boris and the gunfight and the art forgery. And to me, those are minor things. And really the focus should have been, how do you deal with tragedy? How do you deal with trauma and grief? How do you move forward? And how do you deal with addiction and move through that? Or don't move through that. And that I would have really liked to have seen more of. And then the other thing I did really like was, Roger Deakins' cinematography is exquisite,
beautiful,
gorgeous. And I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't, mention that or talk about that. And the scene in the Met where, after the bomb goes off and the plumes of ash and smoke, it's exquisite. It's haunting. Yeah. It's nightmarish, but there's such a serenity to it that's quite strikingly beautiful amidst this tragedy, that I was haunted by that scene, and I loved that scene so much. But yeah, so that's what I liked. That's what I disliked. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Like, so much of what you're saying.
I should point out a few things that I liked, maybe, just because I don't want to shit all over it. Jeffrey Wright, of course, I thought was wonderful, as he always is. I thought it was just great to see Sarah Paulson do something that's unlike what she normally does.
I loved her as Xandra.
What she normally does, she just doesn't usually play drug addicts. What?
No, I loved her as Xandra with an X.
Yeah, with Xandra with an X. That's right.
I'm Xandra with an X.
You know what I thought was really effective, and I haven't seen much of her, although I have seen her before, is Willa Fitzgerald as Kitsy, who becomes the fiance who's cheating on the main character. I thought,
really?
Yeah, I thought if this person existed in real life, that would be her. So
yeah, that's fair.
And also I didn't get the Nicole Kidman thing. Just always struck me as off, not because her performance isn't good, but because the character is so clearly under a cloud of like pills, probably, that it just seems like it's hard to take anything she says seriously because she may pass out at any moment. So,
ooh, that is true. I like that.
Yeah. But hey, what are you going to do? And then, of course, Dennis O'Hara was great, and the cinematography was beautiful. And I liked that there was, for most of the film, a consistent feeling of sadness and or melancholy that stuck around, even in the few good moments of Theo's life. I thought that it was really effective that way. But story-wise and all that kind of stuff, it just sort of fell apart. And from what I understand of the novel, you were talking, Megan, about how they spent all this time on Boris and the gun fight and all that stuff. And that is all in the novel, too, from what I understand. But, when you have 784 pages, you can, like, spend as much time as you want on all of these things and make them to come together in a more natural and or organic way.
Right.
Organic is probably the wrong word because all novels by their nature are contrivance, but whatever.
But they don't always feel like contrivance.
But they don't always feel like contrivance, exactly. So that's the Goldfinch, Too bad it wasn't a canary in a coal mine, I guess is what I'm saying. So
too bad indeed.
Yeah.
So
let's move on. Let's talk about Hustlers, which we just came from.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I wish it was a hard T. Hustlers.
Yeah.
Said with like a little bit of a lisp. Hustlers.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it because it would remind you of Sarah Paulson?
Well, yeah. Oh, she's so great. I love her so much.
Yeah, she is great.
Wow, it has sorry, I just can't help. I just looked at this briefly on IMDb. It has a very low audience score. It has 4.9 out of 10. But
Hustlers?
Who the hell's seen it to give it that rating?
That's a good question.
It has an 82 Metacritic score based on 12 critics reviews. Let's jump into it. Hustlers. It's a movie. It's inspired by a true story.
It's a movie.
By a New York Magazine article about a group of women who were former strippers who concocted this great scheme to take Wall Street asshole guys, drug them, and then bilk them for thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. I don't even know.
Who knows?
Megan, you read the article about it. You said it was depressing.
Yeah. When I saw the screener for Hustlers, I was like, "Ooh, this is gonna be fun!" And then I read the New York Magazine article, and I was like, "Oh fuck, this is depressing."
I mean, I could see how it would be depressing if it was real life and like reading about it on paper. I don't think the movie's depressing. It's actually kind of upbeat for the majority of it. And there's not really a whole lot of serious consequences for the people or the characters, really.
No, and I mean, even if there are, like, there's a coda at the end, it doesn't ever really feel like we don't really feel those
the weight of those situations.
Exactly,
yeah.
There's not a lot of gravity there,
right? I mean, there's like a couple guys that got like really taken for a lot of money, and like one of them you feel bad for, and the other one you're like, I don't know.
So much.
I mean. So, like, the plot is that Constance Wu, she's a stripper, and the movie starts in 2007, and she's starting at this club in New York, and she meets Jennifer Lopez, who's, like, one of the, I don't know, she's, like, one of the people who's been there. She's kind of like...
she's, like, the top stripper.
The top stripper, and my God, there's this incredible dance scene. It's actually... amazing, and like people are just raining money down on her, and she just grabs as much of it as she can carry, and she's walking by Constance Wu, who's just gotten there, and she looks and she goes, doesn't money make you just so horny?
But wait,
Jennifer Lopez says that?
Yeah,
yes,
to Constance Wu.
Yeah, but that scene is so phenomenal. Like, I was riveted.
Yeah,
like,
you cannot take your eyes off the screen. It's just like it's so well shot. It's so well edited,
so well choreographed. Jennifer Lopez is so magnetic and yes, she can dance amazingly. But everything about that scene is just brilliant visually.
Yeah, it's a hell of an opener.
Yes, it's a great way to introduce her.
Yeah, and you're seeing Constance Wu, and she's like the new girl, and she is just getting shit on the whole time. But she sees quickly that Jennifer Lopez is like running the show around there. So she goes out and is talking to her, and Jennifer Lopez is like, yeah, I'll take you under my wing. I'll teach you how to dance. I'll teach you how to like work these guys and like make tons of money. And they're there in 2007. And so they have all these, Wall Street guys that are blowing tons of money right before the big, crash, the recession and all the fallout of that. So it's like they start making all this money off these, Wall Street guys, and the crash happens. And they're like, oh shit, what are we going to do? How are we going to, make money now? There's no one in the club. No one wants to spend the money, but there's still these fucking rich asshole guys.
They never go away.
That we can totally take for tons of money, and they're not going to care because like, we'll make it seem like, oh, we're going to take you out to the club and maybe we'll dance for you or do this or that. And then it's like, just at first it's like, just drink and just take advantage of them because they're like lonely or sad or whatever. And then it's like, they figure out this formula where if they slip them the right amount of drugs, which is like a combination of ketamine and MDMA, and then basically like he's going to be so wasted, we'll just like keep swiping his card at the strip club, and the strip club will take a cut of it, and then we'll take the rest of it, and they would make like $5,000 a night or something like that doing this system.
Sweet.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing. And then so like the story is told through flashbacks and interviews, and the woman, who's writing the article about this whole thing is Julia Stiles, and so she's interviewing Constance Wu, and that's the majority of it. There's like a little bit of Julia Stiles interviewing Jennifer Lopez, but it's mostly told from Constance Wu's perspective.
Oh wait, Julia Stiles isn't a stripper; she's a cop.
Yes.
No, she's a
she's a writer. Yeah, she's not a cop, but a writer.
Oh, she's the reporter. Okay.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
I was hoping she was in on the scam because I was like, where's Julia Stiles been? This is great.
Yeah, it's got a great cast. It has Cardi B and Lizzo in parts. They play other dancers at the club. I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's a good kind of synopsis of the plot. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we should dive into some of the stuff. I thought I enjoyed it. I thought it looked good. I thought it was well edited. I like the music choices in it.
I agree.
I think it's a really cool story. I mean, it's very similar to other kind of rise and fall crime films that we've seen. So in that, it kind of has a set structure. But I like that this is about women. This is about women seizing power and having a good fucking time doing it and having a blast. And taking advantage of guys that are, you know what, they're fucking dirtbags. So like, there's a part where Julia Stiles, Constance Wu gets wrapped up talking about how great it was, and then Julia Stiles brings it back. It's like, so let's get back to the drugging. And it's funny because like that's super judgy, but then like a few minutes later, Julia Stiles looks at Constance Wu and says, I don't feel bad for these guys. Like, don't get like.
Yeah, but she does. That's what's so interesting.
Constance Wu does feel bad for what she did. She does regret. And I think that's kind of, the movie's great when they're on the top of their game, and it's like a lot of fun watching this plan come to fruition and how successful they are at it. But where it falters is kind of the in-between stuff. Like, how do we get to this point where we feel so fine taking advantage of these people, especially for Jennifer Lopez, her character? She's very motherly, and she takes in this group of women, and she's running the show, and she's very nurturing to Constance Wu and takes care of her. Even after Constance Wu leaves for a while, like she has a kid with this asshole guy, she gets rid of him. She has to go back to stripping to make money, and they reconnect. But it's so weird because Jennifer Lopez, her character, is doing these awful things, but she's so nurturing to other people. But then there's this like, the moments toward the end where it's like she's so overconfident and she just doesn't give a shit and like totally is not giving a shit about what's going on, even when people are starting to get hurt now.
Yeah, and then she flips out on Constance Wu and like tries to grab her phone and is like, you ungrateful bitch. And it's like,
right.
Where did this come from?
Yeah, it just comes out of nowhere. Yeah. And then they all get busted. And then Constance Wu's character, she's like, I'm going to take the deal because I want to see my daughter. And at first, J-Lo is mad at her. And then she's like, no, I kind of get it. And then like, but they don't talk for years after this. Like,
no, but they hug and they cry. Yeah, and then they don't talk.
And then they don't talk. And then like Constance Wu's, she's always like asking, Julia Stiles, well, what did she say about me? What did she say about me? Like oh, of course she probably lied and said all this terrible stuff. And she didn't lie or say anything terrible. She gave a good account of her backstory. And then they cut to a scene where there's an interview where, Julia Stiles is interviewing Jennifer Lopez, and she's taking these items out of her purse. And one of them is a photo of Constance Wu when she was a kid. She's like, oh, always carry her with me because, I want to be here. And I feel like we had this connection. And maybe if we met when we were kids, things would have turned out differently. We could have looked out for each other, but maybe it wouldn't.
I really loved that scene. That was so sweet.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of good here with the
there's
relationships between the characters. It just feels like they didn't quite flesh out some of that enough. I don't know if it's like we just didn't spend enough time with Jennifer Lopez's character to understand more of her backstory and maybe why she is the way she is. Yeah. What else?
Yeah, because, we see Constance Wu with her grandmother, and we know that she's taking care of her grandmother, and then obviously she's taking care of her daughter when she has her daughter. And we know Jennifer Lopez has a daughter, and she wants to take care of her, but we don't really know anything about her aside from her maternal, behavior towards the women strippers
in her crew,
and that's it. And then her daughter, and she cares about her daughter, but we don't really know her identity outside of a mothering role. And I feel like if we saw more, and the fact that she's, as they all are obsessed with consumerist goods, but that's the thing too. I agree with you that the movie is at its best in the first half when they're on top and they're getting along and there's this kind of sisterly kind of camaraderie and it's great. And
they're like, fuck everybody else.
Yeah.
There's a scene where it's Christmas and they're all sitting down just opening up these extremely lavish gifts and no one feels the slightest bit guilty about any of it. Just this is fucking awesome. Look at this dope ass mink coat that I just got from, it's they're all just I don't give a shit. I want these fucking leopard print Louis Vuitton shoes. It's just the people are just they're all just so psyched. They're just reveling in it.
Yeah. And that's so interesting because I'm watching it and I'm like, this is so capitalistic, consumerist. And I'm kind of recoiling at it. But then at the same time, it's but dudes do this all the time in films and that's okay.
Yeah, and
so
they
why
get
the
away
hell?
with it.
Right, exactly. So why shouldn't we see women doing the exact same thing and enjoying their power and enjoying, the reclamation of that and trying to gain things, especially when all these women come from backgrounds, where they're impoverished and struggling. And so, so that was great. But the one thing, and I love that the film does talk about this, but the one thing that I'm hung up on is the drugging, and that it was it just bothered me so much, and especially in light of, I think it's interesting that Cardi B is in this film since she admitted to drugging men back before she was a rapper. She said that she would drug men and steal their money, and she didn't feel bad about it. And I thought that it's just kind of interesting that she's in this film about that exact same story. And and it's these guys are such assholes and I don't feel bad about the women taking advantage of them.
No.
But yet I do still feel bad that they're drugged and
well, I mean, I think there's varying levels of people that there's certain people in the movie. There's certain guys that you're like, okay, they're not the worst guys, but they're just easy to take advantage. Those are the guys I feel bad for. Who I do not feel bad for are the guys, and they show Dave guys earlier in the movie who come to the strip club and they're fucking assholes. They're throwing paper at the women and they're just degrading them and just being the worst pieces of shit because they're the guys all the way on the top. And then they show them later, these are the guys getting drugged and they're falling over and they're fucking giving up their mom's maiden names and their passwords and shit. And it's I don't feel bad for that guy because he was in here abusing these women before. So fuck him.
Yeah. It's interesting too that in the very beginning, one of the first guys that Constance Wu dances for, he says, who abused you? What did your daddy do to you? That's that's straight from the article that the two strippers who are essentially J-Lo and Constance Wu said that's what men would say to them all the time. Oh, you must have been abused. And whether they were or not, that's such an inappropriate thing to it's such a an emotionally abusive thing to say to someone while they're at work. So yeah.
And it's not even true about Constance Wu's character.
Exactly.
Her dad, I think, died, and her mother left her with her grandmother and just never came back. And so no one did anything to her.
No.
She just needed to survive and needed money and needed to take care of her grandma.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So it's interesting that like this film is not making a lot of, well, in a way it is, but it's not making perhaps a lot of deep, commentary on class, but yet you can't escape the class commentary that's happening in this film, which is really interesting. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think the cinematography was great. The lighting was great. The music choice was great. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like overall, I would say good, but it's a little uneven. It stumbles a little bit, especially toward the end of the movie where you're like, where's some of this coming from? I don't quite.
Is there a gunfight over a painting?
No.
There is not. There is not.
So we're already doing better, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was funny watching it. After we left, someone said that it reminded them of Showgirls, and I'm like, no, did not remind me of Showgirls at all.
This is more like, I would call this the Strippers of Wall Street. It's like it's kind of like it's kind of like a female version of Wolf of Wall Street, and like the
but we're better.
But I mean we're like reveling in the like debauchery and like having a good time and like bilking other people.
Yeah. It actually kind of it was reminiscent to me a little bit of Magic Mike.
Yeah, that too.
And some of the showmanship of the performances. But it also reminded me a lot, not so much in how it's structured, but just I for some reason, maybe because I love this film so much, but I couldn't stop thinking about Support the Girls and how it's looking at an industry where women are, continuously objectified by men, and how they work and navigate within that realm in order to make a living. And
they play by all the bullshit rules
yes.
and deal with all the obstacles that they got to deal with.
Exactly.
Like in the beginning when she starts and she basically makes no money because she has to keep giving money to other people. It's like, ugh.
Yep. But it's also interesting because I also, funny enough, because we talked about this earlier, I was also thinking about widows and how I wanted widows to have more kind of a sense of camaraderie. And this film had that. And interestingly enough, that New York Magazine article the women talked about how as strippers, it makes way more sense to band together because you can make a lot more money that way. And I like that we saw, the women coming together. So yeah, I enjoyed it. And Jennifer Lopez is great.
Yeah, she's really good. I mean, Constance Wu is good, but Jennifer Lopez, this is her fucking movie.
Oh my God, she's amazing. Listen, I love Jennifer Lopez. She's amazing in Selena and Out of Sight, and even Second Act from last year, which I don't care. I don't think anybody liked, but I liked it, and I love Jennifer Lopez, and she's amazing in this.
What about the one that we like where she gets the first edition of the Odyssey? What's that one called? The Boy Next Door? You've seen that, she was
right?
amazing in that.
I did not see that.
Oh, you need to see it. It's amazing.
By amazing, do you mean terrible?
No,
but terrible
I mean,
in a great way.
Yeah, it's like, it is legit awesomely bad.
Oh, I do like awesomely bad.
It's like you're watching it, you're going, I can't believe that they thought this was a good idea, but oh my God, it's awesome. So,
yeah.
Well, now I'll see it because I do. I think Jennifer Lopez is great.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
Well, I guess this is good enough transition as any, talking about abusive men, to talk about the Hulu documentary we watched, Untouchable, which is about the rise and fall of Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein should have been untouchable because he's fucking gross. But, because, you don't want to touch him because he's disgusting.
Yes.
Which I think Paz de la Huerta actually says something like that, like he's physically repulsive. Doesn't she say that?
Yeah, she does.
More than one woman who was a victim of his say that in the documentary. Yeah. Like, he is gross.
Yeah.
And I like how the documentary basically talks about him in the past tense, like he's dead, which I kind of love. That's like, okay.
I didn't think about that, but yeah, you're right.
You're like watching and you're like, basically everybody's talking about it in the past tense. Nobody's talking about him in the present tense, really. And I like, it's interesting because at first I felt so grossed out by the way that people who worked with him were speaking so highly of him. It's all men and they're like talking about how great he is. And then there's this moment where they switch gears and they're like, but he was a fucking abusive monster.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to talk about, there was one guy who recommended a friend of his to come to the company and she was a victim of his and he kept working there. And then he acts like it's difficult to talk about in the interview. I'm like, dude, fuck you.
Well, and then there's another guy who worked there who was like, well, we have survivor's guilt from staying. And I was like, you can go fuck yourself and fuck yourself
for
hard.
saying survivor's guilt.
Because you're actually comparing you choosing money and staying with a douchebag, fucking abusive fuckface like that over people who survive tragedies and accidents. Like, no, there is no comparison here. Yeah, that was disgusting. But and I have to say, talking about the people who worked there, the woman who was the assistant of Bob Weinstein was amazing when she said that when they got the legal document with the intent to sue because of sexual assault, and she walked into Bob Weinstein's office and said, I quit, and by the way, your brother is a fucking pig. And I was like, good for you, lady.
There were two really awesome women. There was the other woman, I think she was British, and she was
Zenda.
Oh yeah,
something.
She talked about quitting immediately as well as soon as she found out about the abuse. Yeah, those people were my heroes.
Yes.
Well, and then there's the woman who wrote the memo.
Yes.
Or what became known as the memo.
Yeah, the 28-year-old, yes.
Yeah, those women were my heroes.
Mm-hmm. They were great.
The just the short recap version is that this is just a documentary about basically Harvey Weinstein's fucking gross predatory rapist behavior and leading up to his arrest and impending trial. I don't know when that's scheduled to happen, but sort of details, even starting back when he was a concert promoter in Buffalo, how he was a fucking creepoid bastard even then.
Because rapists just get worse. Abusers and rapists just keep getting worse.
And it's at the same time, it's also just super disgusting because you hear the MO. It's like you hear from the first woman when she worked with him when he was a concert promoter, through later victims, and it's just like there's certain through lines of behaviors and things, and it's just like so disgusting to hear. It was like he kept doing like the same things over and over again, and just more and more women were victims. Ugh.
Yeah, well, one of the things I keep thinking about when you think about Harvey Weinstein in particular is you think about all of the women who were in Miramax movies who either won Academy Awards or they're in really successful box office smashes, and then they literally disappeared after that. You know? Like Mira Sorvino just gone.
Yep.
Not Uma Thurman. Gwyneth Paltrow basically retired from acting, Yeah, she pops up every once in a while, but even after she was like never a movie star, although she could have been a movie star. She's Gwyneth Paltrow. Everybody knows who she is. Big deal, blah, blah, blah. And then you just think about all the other people like Annabella Sciorra. Once she did that like one Miramax movie, gone.
Yep.
And it's like because they were all fucking traumatized, and when this documentary doesn't elucidate that so much, but when you think about it, after having seen it and you think about all the other stories you've read, and it's like it all comes together in just one particularly horrible way, and it all makes sense. And I don't really think, except for a couple of the accusers, I don't really think I learned anything new about this documentary. But I do think that it's important just to have them on record for the public to see, and for people who may be, I don't know, there's always some asshole who thinks that, somebody's making this shit up. I will not mention any names, but a guy I went to high school with, not the guy I always talk about, but a different guy. He like I was talking about on Facebook when I still used to use Facebook a lot, about Woody Allen's daughter and how I believed that, her accusations, and he's like, I don't believe it. She just wants money. And it's like, dude,
that's what they all say.
Her mother, let's just forget about it for a moment. Her mother's Mia Farrow. If she needed money, she's got the money. You know what I'm saying?
She's fine.
It's like, I don't think that people, I don't really have a personal frame of reference, but I don't think you, generally speaking, make these kinds of claims because you think, this is going to feel really great when I'm doing it. It comes from a place of fucking shock and horror and shame and ugh, right? I mean, it doesn't come because you want fucking money. Although maybe you do want money, like, as an afterthought. But, like, Jesus Christ. Let's just fucking believe these people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, and kind of piggybacking off of that, one of the things that I thought was one of the most striking things is one of the woman who knew Harvey Weinstein when he was a concert promoter. I think it's Hope Tomorrow. I think that's her name. Yeah. And she says that the thing that people don't realize if you haven't endured rape or sexual assault is that the collateral damage, that it doesn't just affect you, but it affects the relationships you have with people that you love and people in your life. And that's the thing. It never goes away. It never stops. It's always there. People who come forward are not making it up. They're not doing it for fame or attention or money or anything like that, because it is so horrific that all you want to do is hide, and all you want to do is not be in your body and act like, you know, and not admit that it happened. And so you don't really want to have fame and attention and money for this.
You don't want to be reminded of it and have to keep talking about it.
Exactly. So so people who think like, oh, I don't believe women, or oh, they're just all crazy or lying, like, they're fucking assholes and probably are abusers themselves or know abusers and are covering for them.
Yeah.
So.
I was thinking about this as I was watching it, and I think, like, you know, people, even to use the word accuser, I think we need to be referring them as victims. These people are victims
or survivors.
Yeah, or survivors. Like we need. I feel like if we're believing people, we don't want to even use the word accusers anymore.
No. Did I say accuser?
I'm
no.
sorry. I did. It's the reporter in me. Like, I'm not even joking.
No, you're right.
Like, I know. I thought I was just thinking about it because I was thinking about what we're going to talk about on the show this week, and I was just thinking, like, in my brain, I was like, I need to, like, rewire my brain because I'm inclined to say the word accuser, but I'm like, no, that's not right. These people are victims or survivors. We believe them.
Yes.
So they're not accusing. They are telling their story.
They're telling the truth. Yeah.
Well, so that's that. I mean, what else is there to say that's not completely horribly fucking depressing?
So I had a question that I wanted to ask both you guys. So
why? Because we're dudes? Are you pigeonholing us?
No.
Hold on. All right,
because you're both here.
Hold on, let me mansplain it.
Yes, please. I love the mansplaining. I was very struck right away, and not that this isn't about the abuse per se, but I thought it was more a structuring of the documentary as a film itself. Thought it was very interesting that the beginning opens with like beautiful palm trees and beautiful sunny light and people running and it looks so lovely and then obviously, you know, it's going to be this horror shit show that's going to unfold. And it was interesting. I read an interview with the director Ursula McFarlane, and she said that she wanted to focus on the kind of allure of Hollywood and how it's so, you know, lovely and whatnot. And I was curious what you guys thought about kind of the framing of that, like framing that along with the actress from Quebec and kind of talking about her, you know, story, and that's sprinkled in throughout the documentary about how she had all these dreams of getting into Hollywood and it was basically dashed by Harvey Weinstein's creepiness. So
right.
Yeah, I was curious what you guys thought about the structuring of the documentary that way.
What, like, kind of framing it with her story, or? Yeah,
with her story and kind of the focusing, like, or the starting off of kind of like, oh, Hollywood's this, you know, lovely, glamorous place. And,
I did think it was a little strange. And honestly, I thought that including her story and including it in kind of pieces was effective because, like, honestly, like, I didn't know her. I didn't know her as an actor, so I feel like it was an effective story. It's just like, here's somebody that maybe could have had a really promising career that was, like, completely ruined by this assault and Harvey Weinstein basically preventing her from going places. So I did think it was effective, and I thought by the end they kind of ended on an effective note, even though it was an extremely somber note. I mean, I don't know how you end on an upbeat note with this type of story. I think one thing that bothered me was hearing Harvey Weinstein's own words in here.
Oh my God, it was too much of his own
I
words.
didn't like that at all. I thought it was a weird choice. I think the only time it was effective is when they were playing clips that journalists got before he, tried to fight them.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God. Yes. I didn't learn anything new in this documentary either, except for the Rebecca Traister Andrew Gold story about how
that was
Rebecca
insane.
how Rebecca Traister goes in and is trying to get the comment on why the movie O was buried, and then and he gives her the comment, and then he's like, well, you can't use that, and she starts recording, and he calls her a fucking cunt, and who let this cunt in, and calls her a bitch, and all these horrible things, and then her boyfriend Andrew Gold, who's a journalist, steps in and is like, you need to give her an apology, and then he puts him in a headlock and beats the shit out of him.
Right, and people were taking photos.
Yes, so many photos, and there are no photos in the media of this, and that's so disturbing. I mean, like, yes, obviously the rape and sexual assault is disturbing, but this is also disturbing too.
Well, yeah, because there's no earthly reason the media should have covered his tracks.
Exactly.
If anything, this is such an important story to share that this big fucking, this fucking big shot in Hollywood was beating the shit out of somebody over a quote he didn't like.
Right. Over nothing. Yeah. Well, and the other
over
thing...
a quote that was like, by the way, unless you say off the record beforehand, it's
Correct.
on the record. I mean, there are rules to reporting. There's 4 kinds of things. There's on the record, there's background, deep background, and off the record. And if somebody's going to talk to you off the record, don't even bother, because you can't use the information. So just that's something for you fledgling reporters out there.
I like that you're spreading the lessons.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thinking about another thing that struck me too that I found so disturbing, speaking of the media, and this is not a surprise, but when Ronan Farrow was talking about gathering all of the information from survivors and from getting the NYPD recording of Harvey Weinstein, and he talks about how before he got the recording, when he had the survivors, it didn't matter who the survivors were, it didn't matter how many he had. The editors kept saying to him, these women are crazy, you need credible women, you need more women, you need more, and it was never enough. And it's like, what is the tipping point? How many is enough? Shouldn't one be enough? But no, it never is, and that's so disturbing. Yeah,
and I feel like in our present culture, it's not till it starts tipping over into double digits, and it's like, that even is too many people. And in this case, it was 80 people that came forward, they said?
80, yep.
I mean, it was something insane like that with Bill Cosby, too, double digits. But we have a president in office who also has double-digit accusers, and nothing has fucking happened to him. So
exactly.
Where's his
know.
documentary?
Who also bragged about sexual assault. Yeah. What? What was that?
I said, where's his documentary? That's what I want to know. Why isn't somebody fucking making that?
I don't even want him to have the attention.
No. Well, there's that, too. But yeah, that's Evan, I'm glad you brought up the point about hearing his own words, because that put me off right away.
What is this?
I don't give a fuck about his childhood. I don't give a fuck about his childhood friend. I don't care about what his words are. Like, I don't care. And from in a certain way, I'm like, okay, maybe they're trying to show contextually how an abuser comes to be an abuser in power. And I'm like, okay, I can sort of get behind that if we're really anchoring it contextually, but that doesn't really feel like it happens. So if that is the intention, I don't think it really worked.
No, it was like the Cliff Notes version of that.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I would have they do tack it on at the end, like, oh, there's a Harvey Weinstein in every industry, and there, and within Hollywood there are more as well. But it's just kind of like an afterthought. It's not really woven into the documentary like the way I wish it had been.
Right. Well, I mean, I think you either go the route where you're saying, I'm going to focus on this guy, and we're going to understand him psychologically, and we're going to hear all of the stories of people who he's effective, and that's a thing. Or it's like you think more broadly and say, all right, we're focusing on other people. Like we're talking about people in all different industries, so what are the common traits?
Yeah.
And then maybe we talk about Harvey Weinstein as an example.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm greedy. I wanted both. I want both, damn it. But yeah. So, yeah.
I
kept
trying
thinking,
to figure out what else to say.
I know. Well, I also was trying to think if I liked this documentary. or just appreciate that it exists.
Like is a loaded word for a subject
Yeah.
like this.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that it exists. Like I said, I don't think that it's particularly good. I think that it's more important than it is watchable. And not just because it makes you feel fucking gross, but because, you know, it doesn't really even feel right. This is so stupid. It doesn't even feel right criticizing this documentary because it is such an important subject. But at the same time, it's just kind of like, yeah, I read Ronan Farrow's piece, and I read the Two Times reporters' pieces, or all those pieces that
Jodi
came
Cantor
out.
And
Jodi
Megan
Cantor,
Twohey.
yes,
and Megan Twohey.
Twohey, yeah. I was trying to remember their names, and I was like, well, I'm just not going to say. I'll just say the two reporters because I can't remember their names. And Ronan Farrow, does he look like Woody Allen to you? I'm just putting it out there. So, anyway,
he doesn't to me.
No, he really doesn't, does he? No. I mean, he looks more like his mother than anyone, but which is good for him. But getting back to the documentary and its importance, it's important, but there are probably a lot of people who have maybe heard the Harvey Weinstein story or are more interested in learning about Me Too, don't know a lot about it, and they have Hulu, and maybe they come across this and they watch it and they learn something. So, you know, maybe that's good. I don't know.
I'd like to think that because, I mean, even if people, you know, read both, you know, articles, or maybe they didn't, maybe they only read one, or maybe they didn't read any, maybe they just saw the headlines, you know, but whether they read them or not, you know, a visual medium is different and can stick with you more. So, you know, perhaps it would reify what they already knew, or they'll learn something. So, yeah.
Or maybe even just getting back to that original point, like these people aren't making this up for fame and fortune, and these people didn't. So there's an aspect of the documentary that touches on the fact that there were jokes about Harvey Weinstein's predatory behavior in popular culture. And that's another way that people often dismiss, you know, the survivors of his assaults is like, oh, well, they just did it to be famous. They just did it to get a part in the movie. It's like, no, there are plenty of people that didn't get these things. Like, they weren't just sleeping with him. It was like, they thought that they needed this to just talk to him and get in the room with him, and then it's like, bam, then they're assaulted by him.
Yeah, that's interesting because that also reminded me of the part where they talked about the digging up of photos of Harvey Weinstein with women actors and how they look so happy with him, and that's another tactic to dismiss survivors' accounts is by, well, look how happy they were, they got along great, they were friends, and just everything about this is just so gross and awful. And this was an exhausting documentary to watch. I had to take a lot of breaks in order to get through it. It was a tough one, just because it was so emotionally triggering and draining.
Yeah, it's intense.
Yeah,
so
very much so.
That's something to think about before watching it.
Yeah.
I mean, but if you're like me and you've this year watched Leaving Neverland and Surviving R. Kelly, then I think you will be able to handle this one.
It's the trifecta of gross men and their abusive behavior. Yeah, I'm like working my way up to watching them.
Working my way up to you, girl. Thank you.
Musical
altered
interlude.
Lyrics there. Yeah.
Yeah, you made it work.
there haven't been a lot of musical interludes in Spoilerpiece in the last couple of years, Evan. We got to get back on our game.
We got to bring it back.
Bring it back. Yeah, I don't actually know any songs with the lyrics "Bring It Back," so I just kind of shouted that out.
No, those are lyrics though.
Oh, baby, come back.
Well, there's that too.
Baby, come back. I was wrong,
and I just
feel so
can't
That's I just can't live without you. Is that it?
Am
or
I
I feel
using the
so
wrong
lost
ones?
without you.
I don't know.
I don't remember the words. We're singing the same song. But
we are singing the same song.
You were doing it in one key, and I was doing it in
another.
another.
I think I was,
so,
probably.
Anyway. Yes.
Anyway, this was a I feel like, this was a week of, you know, abusive men in film. We had Hustlers, we had Untouchable. Well, there's not abusive men in whatchamacallit, the Goldfinch, but
yeah.
Oh well.
And not in Vita and
oh yeah, not in
Virginia.
Vita and Virginia. No, there's no abusive men, thank God. That's one good thing about that. Well, no, there's a couple good things, but that's a good thing about that film. It's a nice respite from from the abusive men of the world.
Yeah.
Oh.
But yes, we have covered a lot this week. So we obviously would say see Untouchable. We would say with the warning that, prepare yourself emotionally for what you're in for.
Yes, massive trigger warning.
Hustlers, see it, I would say.
Yes.
Vita and Virginia, you said you would see it?
I would say see it just because it's an important story. And I liked it. It was okay. Just go in low expectations. But
and Goldfinch, yay or nay? That to me is an answer in itself. I'm going to say nay.
It looks really good.
Yeah, the cinematography is so beautiful.
It's dramatically inert. How about that? It looks beautiful, but it's dramatically inert.
Yeah, that's fair. I
All
like
right.
that. And it's overlong.
Yeah,
Too long.
but also underlong at the same time.
Yes.
It's
No,
kind of like
yes.
It Chapter 2. It's like...
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
I could not agree more. And I saw those back to back almost, and I felt like I was having deja vu. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, so that wraps us up for this week's episode of Spoilerpiece Theater. Megan, thank you for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I
It
always
was
love
great
being
to
here.
have you here.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. I always love it here with you guys.
Yeah. And hopefully you'll come on again soon.
I hope so.
So you can find us anywhere you can get podcasts, but you can also find us at spoilerpiece.com. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com. We're at Spoilerpiece on Twitter. We're Spoilerpiece Theater on Facebook. And you can give us a call.
At 862-21-PEACE.
You can leave us a message and tell us what you
that
think.
Voice,
Yes.
by the way, when you leave your message. Just, I'm
And
throwing that out there.
That sexy DJ voice, that
Yeah.
nice DJ voice.
Only messages left like this.
Who's that night DJ guy that was like nationwide? Do you guys know who I'm talking about?
Shadow Stevens?
Oh,
Was he a night
Shadow
DJ?
Stevens is a good one, but no.
You mean Wolfman Jack?
No. I don't know. He was some guy who was like the Magic Hour or something.
Oh.
Anyway, it was like nationwide. I thought it was just like in where I lived in Connecticut, but no, it was apparently nationwide. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, use that voice.
Use that voice when you leave us a message. And yeah, I mean, if you like the show, leave us a rating and help other people find the show on your podcast platform of choice. Tell a friend. And if you really like the show, sign up for our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/spoilerpiece. And you can sign up to receive exclusive audio for as little as $5 a month. You can also participate in monthly polls where you can pick the movies that you want us to see. This month, we're voting on 70s era disaster movies.
Oh my God, disaster movies are the best.
Yeah, so I think your three choices are The Towering Inferno.
Oh!
Yeah. Evan, help me out.
Poseidon Adventure.
Poseidon Adventure, yeah.
And is there an airport movie in there? Or am I?
Well, there's
first
Airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, there's Airport with Helen Hayes. Yeah.
Okay,
That's the
so
one.
then those are the choices. So if just for as little as $5 a month, you can sign up and vote in polls, and you can pick movies for us to see.
And I'm not going to make any suggestions, but pick the longest one, so you're getting your $5 worth.
Just don't fucking pick Highlander 2 again, people.
Yeah, no, that's true. Although we brought that on ourselves.
Yeah,
I
are you
know.
guys still pissed about that? I love it.
It's not. It's just it's really more of a head scratcher than anything else. That's just.
Listen,
it's like.
How did they bring Sean Connery back? That's what I want to know.
Magic.
Yeah.
Magic.
So yes, so, wrapping up. My name is Evan Crean. I am editor for The Independent. I am co-chair of BAFCA and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living. And you can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
I'm Dave Riddle. I write for Salt Lake City Weekly, Orlando Weekly. You can follow me on Twitter and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
And I'm Megan Kearns. I'm a freelance writer and critic, and I am also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And you can find me on Twitter at OpinionusWorld.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a
Huzzah, huzzah.
$24 Twitter handle there. I have to, your name's not in it.
Nope.
It's an alias, but it's also a thing people know you by. So, it's a thing. It's a whole thing.
I wanted to be very incognito when I started writing for some weird reason. And so, yes, that is my Twitter handle. But I do have another secret Twitter handle with my name in it.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, wait, it's got your name. Well, now I guess it's not a secret, is it? I mean, come on.
Or is it?
Dun, dun,
Da-da,
dun. See you next week.
Bye.